We already all know what's been happening in Washington, D.C., what happened on January 6th in Washington, D.C. I'm not going to sit here and bore everybody with the details. I'm sure you've already seen it all on the mainstream media or on various progressive YouTube channels. You've already got your news. You've already, seen how the series of events led up with Donald Trump, tweeting about the rigged election, something we talked about as well. Getting his supporters worked up into this like cult-like fervor, and telling them to, march on DC, to protest, to call for a recount, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously all of his supporters, about, I think it was 15 to 30,000 Trump supporters, Make America Great. Protesters showed up on DC. They marched on Capitol Hill. Things quickly escalated. The protest against the rigged election quickly turned into a violent mob. They stormed the Capitol building. They broke in windows. They stormed the vestibule. We've seen all the different things that happened, the clashes with police. I don't know. I'll see if I can get the picture of this, but I'm sure you guys may have seen the image of what I suppose is like Secret Service or Capitol Security, standing with guns drawn outside of the door to the House chamber with, Trump supporters right outside banging on the door. If you watch Jimmy Dore, I'm sure you've seen a lot of this footage. I think Status Quo put out some really good footage of a clash between Trump supporters and the police in a hallway that was just a veritable melee. I can only imagine being in the middle of that, trying to record for your YouTube channel. Shout out Status Quo. You guys have a lot more balls than I do, but yeah, we've seen everything. This is not news to anybody watching this channel, but I still wanted to make a video about it, to kind of touch on, my perspective, to think out loud on this subject a little bit, on this event, because I'm hearing, all this stuff about, the craziness of Trump supporters, these crazy cultists, these QAnon people. You've seen the guy with the fucking bull's head with the fur and shit, the QAnon shaman, I think they're calling him. We're hearing all about how the Trump supporters are crazy and they turn violent, and obviously we've all had a laugh about these Trump supporters, these flag with the thin blue line people clashing with police, all that stuff. We've also seen some of the evidence that a lot of the police, if they weren't working with the Trump supporters, with the Trump marchers, they sort of, almost a lot of them turned a blind eye, just sort of let this happen. And we've seen obviously the comparisons between how the government responded to a Black Lives Matter protest, to Black Lives Matter related unrest in the streets of Washington, D.C. Everyone's seen that fucking image of like 100 National Guardsmen or clandestine government agents in full like military gear made for Iraq, standing with guns and arms on the stairs to the Lincoln Memorial. And then you compare that to, the DC knew there was going to be a protest of somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 protesters in DC, and they were completely unprepared, and people speculating on that being purpose. And you clearly see that divide between when people stand up to racial injustice and hate crimes and black people being murdered in the street, compared to, MAGA people who think that the election was rigged. And obviously there's no question which side many, and not all, but many police officers and even military fall on, which side they fall on in regards to this. But, that was obviously very telling to see, the difference in response according to why a protest is happening. So again, we've all heard about that. And of course, another thing I found interesting was, and rather disappointing, not interesting, is, Americans finally realized that they can literally storm their federal buildings and make demands. And, one of the first times, I imagine, in American history we see, protesters, call them what you want, whatever, I don't care, storm the Capitol building. And not only do they not show up with a list of demands, rather than showing up to fight for health care or wealth inequality or, imminent climate catastrophe or better wages or ending the wars overseas, do they show up to protest any of that? No, they show up because they lost an election and a fucking orange lunatic in a yellow toupee riled them up into madness, and if that's not telling about the fucking American condition, I don't know what is. So, just that perspective on that is just fucking embarrassing to me, because, and I'll take some flack for this, I'm sure, but I don't give a fuck about the Capitol or the government being under siege. Like, that's my personal feeling. I don't give a shit. This government's so fucking corrupt. This government stages this kind of shit in countries all around the world all the time. It sort of just desserts to see it happening in the United States, right? So really, I don't give a shit about that. I really don't. I mean, I'm hurt and upset that people, got hurt, just like in the Black Lives Matter protest. That's fucking terrible. But as far as a riot leading to the Capitol building being stormed, I don't care. It was bound to happen in this country one way or another at some point. But I'm immensely disappointed that this is the reason why it happened. Is a bunch of fucking Trump cultists lost an election and they can't fucking handle it. Hashtag snowflakes, you lost, get over it. It's just embarrassing to me as an American. I'm sure the whole fucking world is laughing at us. But beyond all that, there's another aspect of this that I'm not, hearing about, that I'm a perspective on this that, none of the progressive YouTubers or anybody really has touched on. And that's the idea that this is what fucking happens. This is what happens. This is what happens when a government fails its people for generations. This is what happens when a society, when a government fails to provide a return on its promises. This is what happens when for generations you lie and cheat and steal and you hollow out the essential institutions that make a society run, when the government can't break gridlock to get through healthcare, when we can't rebuild our infrastructure, when you spend trillions of dollars over a decade murdering people in foreign wars, but you can't provide jobs to working people, you can't provide adequate retirement, you can't feed hungry children, you can't get people off the street. We got 500,000 people off the street. We've got, I think I read 77,000 people who die every year in this country from a lack of health care. This is what happens when you don't fucking educate people for generations, when you dumb an entire population down for generations, when you fill their mind with the concept of national exceptionalism, when you pump their brain full of flag waving and eagle soaring and fucking military propaganda on every fucking YouTube and television commercial and billboard. This is what happens when you don't do your fucking job as a government. This isn't just the fault of Donald Trump inciting these riots. It's not just the fault of the freaking lunatics that had the gall to go and storm the Capitol building. This is the fault of Democrats and Republicans for failing to govern a nation for the last 40, 50 fucking years. This is what happens. And now everyone's sitting here surprised and shook, and this is a fucking attack on our democracy and our institution, our constitution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is long overdue. This is going to happen one way or another, okay? And I don't know how many times people on the left, how many times progressives have to say this, but Trump is not the cause. Trump is a symptom of a failed system. And the United States was going to go down this route of political extremism, on the route of being a failed state, no matter what, so long as we continue these neoliberal policies that benefit billionaires and corporations and perpetuate endless war overseas and do nothing to help the working class. Because as I said, this is what happens when you don't do your job, when you don't govern, when you don't take care of working class people, when you purposely dumb them down. They turn to national populism. When you don't give them actual populist policies, when you don't give them jobs, when you don't give them health care, when you don't give them promises to fix the climate, when you don't give them clean drinking water and access to food and access to housing, when you don't actually do your job and give the things that the people are demanding, and when you've purposely dumbed them down for generations when they don't even know how their government works anymore, when they have no idea what real history is because you've done nothing but fucking propagandize them for generations and tell them to wave a flag, they turn to national populism. They turn to nationalism. They turn to fascism. Why in the name of God do you think that the German people turned to Adolf Hitler? Do you think they turned to Adolf Hitler because their government was doing their job? No. It was because after World War I, they were faced with economic catastrophe, okay? And things got worse when the Great Depression hit. And the government still didn't do its job. They had fucking neoliberals in, and they didn't do the job that the people demanded of them. And they got radicalized, and they got desperate. What do you think happens when you back a cat in the corner? It's going to scratch the fuck out of you. It's going to go insane. And so they turned to Adolf Hitler. And it's the same situation here, where we got Americans that have been dumbed down for so long that they don't know how their government works, when the government has lied to them for so long that even the average working class American, not even some crazy radical extremist like me, a communist or a Trump supporter, believes in them anymore. This is what happens. They turn to demagogues. They turn to fucking madmen. And I got a newsflash for you. We've got the House, the Senate, and the presidency now. If the Democrats don't do something now, if they squander this attempt, if they put their corporate lobbyists and billionaire donors ahead of the working class people again, it's going to be far worse next time. This is the same thing that happened in ancient Rome. The government failed and failed and failed and failed. And then they turned to strongmen because the strongmen told the people that they would help them, that they would give them a way out, that they give them bread and games. And so they turned to strongmen like Sulla that completely defiled and destroyed the republic. And that's the stage that we're sitting in now in the United States, is the age of strongmen. And if the Democrats fail again, it's going to be far worse next time. And before you know it, the little guys that we have left of a republic, of a representative republic, of a democracy in this country is going to be gone, and it's going to be full out, fucking mask off, imperial United States, the American empire. Normally, I'm a lot more level-headed on this channel, and I know that's why, you know, a lot of you guys come and watch this channel. That's what you've told me is, you know, level-headed perspective. But I'm not fucking level-headed on this. It's basic fucking history. You know, it's history 101. And I know as leftists, as progressives that watch this channel and watch other progressive YouTubers, it's fucking frustrating. Because we've been telling people for, you know, generations that this is how it was going to go. And as young people that watch the show, I know how frustrated you are because you've been out in the streets, knocking doors, making phone calls, organizing, going on strike, etc. For, like me, your entire young adult life, to have people not listen to you, and to have this situation happen now and still not have people listen to you. And when I say it's Republicans and Democrats' fault, they fucking laugh at you, or they think you're fucking crazy, or they just want to put all the blame on Trump and Trump supporters, and they fail to see the systemic issues which led to this, inevitably led to this. And it's fucking frustrating. So here I am yelling into a microphone for you guys. And the other thing is, you know after this, and rightfully so, calling it an act of domestic terrorism. But you know after this incident on 1/6, the elites, the establishment Democrats, the people that actually fucking run this country are going to use this as an excuse to clamp down on civil rights and civil liberties. They're going to use this to further perpetuate the fascist military police state. I mean, Biden's already come out and, called this an act of domestic terrorism. And yes, it is an act of domestic terrorism. But he said one of the first things he's going to work on in his administration is passing harsh domestic terrorism legislation. We're going to see an expansion of the Patriot Act. We're going to see dissident behavior, quote unquote, being policed. We're going to see further censorship of the internet because of this. And it's not fucking good. And it's disturbing to me that so few people see what's happening. And I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. I'm yelling. I'm angry. I'm upset like just about every fucking American is about this. But I'm upset on another level, like I'm sure many of our viewers are as well, because people aren't seeing the bigger picture here, and it's going to not only cost us our way of life in the United States, it's going to cost people their lives before it's all said and done. And I'm just sorry to be sitting here even having this conversation with you guys. And I'm scared in a way, because people like you and I, people that, speak truth to power, we're going to be on a fucking watch list in going to this new America now. But, in the end, I guess I don't care. I've done what I can. I broadcast. I get involved. I do activism. I've done what I can to try to fight back, against the tide of imperialism and police state and Big Brother Orwellian dystopia that we're heading towards in this country. So no matter what comes, at least I know that I can say that I did my part. And I know that you guys that watch this channel can do the same too. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for you. I know it's a bit of a rant, it's a bit of a ramble, more than usual, and I know this isn't why you guys usually watch this channel, so I apologize for that. But I had to sit down here and say what I was feeling and try to give you guys a little perspective on this. So I don't know, guys. You'll have to let me know what you think about this whole situation. Where do you think we go from here in the wake of January 6th? And as always, guys, I love you very much. And, going into the days ahead, just stay safe and be careful. And until next time, guys, I'll see you around. Bye.
I'm staring into the rain. I don't feel anything.